Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Commercial Real Estate Secrets. I'm your host, Austin Hare. Today, our guest is Jeremy Lustig. He's a doctor and co-owner of Lustig and Young Orthodontics. He's the CEO and co-founder of 5 Point Dental Specialists, which is a DSO, and they currently have 17 locations with 3 currently under LOI. So, Jeremy, thanks for coming on the show today. Thanks for giving us your time. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, yeah, small world, I know dental brought us together, but it turns out that we've got wakeboarding in common. And so you guys seems like are avid wakeboarders and wake surfers now.
That is for sure. Just waiting for this weather to warm up a little bit so we can get back out and get back to doing it.
Yeah. And you're located in Dallas, right? So you guys just got hit with that massive cold front.
Yes. We are fixing the damage from sub-zero temperatures, and then it's 75 degrees yesterday, so you never know.
Yeah, it is. That's crazy. We've been lucky enough in Orlando to avoid those very sub-zero, sub-freezing cold fronts. It's been pretty nice here, so I can't complain.
Never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's been a crazy year, but yeah, I'm sure we could spend a long time talking about how crazy 2020 was and how 2020 is going to top it. But before we get too sidetracked, I just want to know your story a little bit and educate our listeners, because everybody's got a unique story, and it's interesting to hear how people arrived at where they're at. And so what was it like for you? Did you grow up in a family of dentists? Were you born and raised in Texas? I mean, what was childhood like for you?
No, I was actually born and raised I'm one of the only people you'll know that will say I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada. Most people transplant to there, but that's where I was born. Lived there until into elementary school, then moved to southern Utah, actually about an hour and a half from Las Vegas. Went through high school there, and then found myself in Texas. I went to Baylor University and then Baylor Dental School, and then also into my orthodontic residency there. My dad was a businessman, owned dealerships that sold like RVs, recreational, like trailers, motorhomes, etc. And no dentistry in the family, but I don't know, it was something that my dad thought was a good job. And when you're an impressionable kid and your dad is telling you, you got to look into this. I had a neighbor who was an orthodontist, and so my brother and I kind of started venturing down that path, and he's currently oral maxillofacial surgeon, and then I was the smart one and went into orthodontics.
Nice. Okay. So, what was that process like of deciding to go to orthodontics and then starting to work? And then how did you actually acquire or open up your first location as the owner?
Obviously the process is a little tedious, but I knew, I think I have a paper when I was 12 years old that I wrote that said I want to be an orthodontist, and I'm pretty goal driven. And so my dad just said, if you're going to do it, you have to do well in school. And so I just would work really hard, and just ended up proceeding through, of course, college, high school, college, where, high school and college, but then dental school was tough. And trying to strive to be, towards the top or the top of your class is difficult. But then, getting through all that, getting my degree in orthodontics, and I initially got out, started working for a dental company. And then I found who I thought was the best business-minded orthodontist, at least in the vicinity, and reached out and got a job with him as an associate, because I wanted to learn everything that he had. Simultaneously, I was opening up my first practice while that was happening. So I was working hard 6 days a week, 6 to 6, just, patients I'd start seeing at 6 a.m. really for that company I worked for. But I had to do that so that I could taper that job down and start building my business. And so I was really working I think at any given time, I was controlling 7 offices in a week. It was a crazy time, but that's what it took to get it done. So my first was a de novo startup.
Wow. Okay. So essentially you were working for another orthodontist, and at the same time you were starting up your own. So you're kind of learning, right? Learning what he's doing, seeing what he's doing, also seeing patients, putting in the time, and then you're splitting your time. It sounds like you're putting in like an 80-hour week. So full-time at his place and then full-time at your place. And so I'm guessing, were you just trying to implement those things that you saw him doing well in your own practice at the same time?
So I kind of had another prong to that, was I was working for this large dental company. They paid me better, and so that was helping to pay the bills at home. The orthodontist that I was working for was a 2-day-a-week deal, and I would just look at what he would do. He was very successful, and I don't believe that you have to reinvent the wheel. And so I found the things that I thought that he did that were successful. I modified some of those to fit me. And yeah, and it was mostly him that I emulated and would start doing things in my practice. It obviously is not an exact copy because you have your own personality into it. But so yeah, I started building that at the same time, my practice, getting the plan started, and then literally opened up my practice 6 months in post residency while still working for him and this company, which I held on to both of those jobs for over 2 years.
Wow. Okay. And so, yeah, a lot of times it's hard to secure the financing to open up a new space. I mean, 6 months out of residency, you said.
Yes.
Was that a difficult process?
Very. It was tough, but the way I started out was unusual. So what I thought was, I know I can't get the money right now. And back then lending wasn't like it is, today. It was really difficult to do. So what I did was I rented spaces in 2 dental offices of people that didn't use their office, 7 days a week. So I'd go in and take a Friday in one office and a Saturday in one, and then had a Tuesday afternoon in one, and I would rent a chair. And then as I started expanding, I would rent 2 chairs. And it made it so that my out-of-pocket expense could be I didn't even have to get a loan. It could be funded by the jobs that I was working. And so then what I did was able, over a couple-year period while I was still working for those companies, I was able to build up a patient base that I was able to show success and revenue. Then when I went to the bank, I didn't go to the bank with a blank slate and a list of things I needed to buy. I went to them with those things plus a revenue stream to show them of the recurring revenue, with orthodontic contracts. So it made it so that getting that first loan wasn't as difficult as it probably should have been.
Wow, that's great. That's a really smart way to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what all went into, because you did a de novo location, and, arguably the second most important decision you make is where it's going to go. Because the first decision is, am I going to do this or not? Once you have conviction, once you decide you want to move forward, the second location is, where am I going to put it? So what were some of the factors that you used to decide where you thought the best location would be?
So, I would get home from work at night, I'd eat dinner, and then every single night I would spend my time in front of the computer. And what I would be doing is demographics, just demographics. I always started every time I've done this, and I always start with the local school districts. I look at their, being that orthodontics is pretty much based on mostly school-aged kids. We do adults as well, but as a general rule, it's the school-aged kids and their parents are who you're treating. And so I would find out where the current schools were, high schools, middle schools, and elementary. And then I would look at the future plans. Every school district has a plan and they already own property. And so you see where they're going to be building and what it's going to be. And where I would find my intrigue as to which area I wanted to be in. Then I'd get in the car, go drive it, see what made sense. And I ended up, that first practice, I ended up finding a location that was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, to be honest with you. I got a lot of ridicule from some of my colleagues just saying that's a silly place to go. But I knew more than they did because I had been studying it. And then I just hoped that what the plans for the city would come true. So that's the way I went about it. I had a really neat opportunity. That orthodontist that I worked for was like to invest in real estate. So I went to an area where there were no commercial buildings, and he was able to come out and do an investment for himself. And he built a bunch of buildings where I was coming in as the tenant. And I ended up helping him fill those buildings. He would give me a little bit of a perk for doing so. And so I had dentists and pediatric dentists and chiropractors and all sorts of stuff move into the buildings.
Wow. So you're almost like a commercial real estate broker for that point in time.
I actually was. I built a 4x8 billboard, board up front saying, that my practice was coming soon. And then at the bottom for leasing information, call. And so I would field the calls and fill the building for him with, he didn't have to pay a real estate commission. So we did pretty good. We filled the whole building. I think it was about a 10,000 square foot building with 4 or 5 tenants, and filled it all up prior to me actually moving in.
Man, that's the dream. As a real estate developer, I mean, that's a slam dunk right there. You can get that lined up to where you're paying for a building, especially like 10,000 square foot is a good size. Where you essentially pay for the build out, all the construction, and you're filling that with tenants once it's ready to go, like preemptively. That's a hard thing to do, because a lot of times when you're buying an existing, when you go to develop something from the ground up, there's a lot of costs to that a lot of people don't take into consideration. So, when you're getting that pad ready, you're flattening the ground, you're putting in the infrastructure, the plumbing, you're getting it ready for power, all that kind of things. I mean, people don't take that into consideration. And so that's why you want several tenants and you want accredited tenants. And that's why the rent rates are what they are. And it's just hard unless you physically go do that. You don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so, and that's why a lot of times developers, they'll buy existing buildings that are vacant because that work has already been done. And maybe they have a tenant or two that's in there, but to create, that sort of value is really unique. So did that become a model at all that you felt like you could replicate, where you would go someplace first and then you would essentially use that kind of draw of having an orthodontist to bring in other tenants alongside you?
So actually, I'm in the midst of that right now. I have another building that we've recently built that has a vacancy next door. We're waiting for a strategic neighbor, to be honest with you, something that works with us. So we're patient and kind of waiting it out. I wish I would have been able to fill it while it was in build, like we were able to do for him so many years ago, but that didn't happen that way. And so that's okay. But yeah, I think that the model is great. I'm interested in real estate, obviously. And, but having watched him go through this in the process, now it wasn't that smooth of a process, I will tell you. We had some building problems, and lots of delays, as I think you can always count on. But once it got said and done, I think it was a great investment for him. And it was certainly a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to plant myself somewhere where there was nothing else to go. So it was a win-win in the end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Commercial real estate can be very profitable, but it's also very capital intensive, right? You got to have capital if you want to get started. And so I don't think there's ever a case where everything goes smoothly, because that's what makes it, sort of competitive. I mean, all of the different factors, you've got the tenants, you've got the construction guys, and then to throw a wrench into everything, you've got the city and you've got the government, and they got to approve everything. And so it is definitely no cakewalk. Even something that's a slam dunk, like you guys said, it's still a lot of work. So yeah, I absolutely I can see that. I mean, we did a project and the city came through and they tested this is a 5,000 square foot building. So it's not very big. And they tested the concrete and they said, oh, this isn't up to our new code. The building was built in 2006. You got to redo the entire thing. So that's going to cost us $250,000 just because the city arbitrarily decided to increase their standards. And so, stuff like that happens all the time. And that's why you need to have good margins in these deals to protect yourself, because if you don't, like, stuff like that happens and that could totally throw you, out of business, or at least totally derail the project. So yeah, there's a lot of risk involved. So, but I do, yeah, what you did was cool. And maybe we can talk later about finding a way to replicate that. But yeah, that was great for your first location. So essentially it sounds like seeing his involvement in the real estate, seeing how that panned out for him, gave you even more of an interest in getting involved in the real estate side. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is for sure. And then not to mention, my dad's always been involved in real estate and has always said, rent when you have to rent, but buy when you're able to buy. And so I've kind of held that philosophy. So what I would do is I've moved to a location and I would be renting. I would already be looking for that location for me to own. And as soon as my lease would expire, I would typically with a 3-month lead, I would move into the new space with about 3 months left on my lease, just in case any hiccups happened. I had a little bit of overlap and I would move out and go into my own facility. And so we've done that a few times, trying to, as I've moved on, whether I bought a practice or did a de novo, either way, trying to come to, I don't want to own the real estate when it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. We always, we're indifferent when it comes to renting or owning. The way that we look at it is, if you can own, that's great. But we always coach from get the best location first. And if there is nothing available to buy, you have to rent, then we always advocate for getting the location is going to best serve your clients. It's going to best give you more business. Even right now, you could, I'm sure, lease out the other half of your building and make money from that asset, but you're holding out because what's going to be better for your business is getting a synergistic user than just letting anybody fill it. And so we kind of use a similar line of thinking in terms of whether our clients, buy or lease the real estate, because at the end of the day, it is situational. A lot of times it's not always a right or wrong answer. Even with a preference to buy, which we love buying, it doesn't always work out. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, when you can own it and you're in the best location, that's the best of both worlds right there. So I'm also curious, how did you go? Because like that first location that, essentially you're a sole proprietor, right? You're like a solopreneur, as they call it, because you own the business, yes, but you're doing all the work. And then there's something that has to shift quite dramatically to go from one location to multiple locations. So what happened? How were you able to scale and open up that second location? Did you essentially have some practices that you figured out, like, hey, we're kind of onto something here, we're doing something unique, or did you always just know from the beginning you wanted to open up multiple practices?
I didn't know from the beginning, but again, I'll use that orthodontist that I worked for as who I modeled after. He was really successful, and I liked the way he ran his practice. He had 2 locations, and so while I was still renting space in the dental office, I opened up my second location about 8 months into my first practice. My first de novo, wow. I opened up a second de novo, so I had 2 going with that same model, and that happened because a dentist I had bumped into, and I started questioning him. I said, hey, I'd like to eventually someday come out here, thinking in 2 or 3 years. And about 2 or 3 months later, he just randomly calls me. And I'd only met this guy one time. I saw him at a dental show, and I saw where his name badge had his city, and I knew that was a city I wanted to go to. So I just introduced myself. Well, he kept my name and number. About 2 or 3 months later, he calls me and says, all right, we're ready for you. Like, what do you mean you're ready for me? He goes, yeah, you said you wanted to come out here. We need you now. Our practice is growing, and because he had just built his practice, and his practice was really growing.
Wow.
And I said, man, I can't do that. This is way too early, maybe a couple of years. And he explained that if, I'm going to get somebody. I said, okay. And I don't know, I had a couple of sleepless nights, and I just called him one day, just a random day, woke up, called him and said, hey, I'm going to do it. And so, I mean, there was a little bit more discernment behind it, but in being candid, it was kind of like that. Went out there, I explained the model that I was currently using that was working. He said, sounds great to me. And off I went, and there went location number 2.
Wow. Wow. Talk about another, slam dunk. Like, essentially this guy is doing so well. That's your feeder, right? Like that's going to give you all the business, which is the primary reason why you don't want to start a de novo, is because the amount of time it takes to build up that run rate of cash flow. But here you get an opportunity where he's like, okay, I got a bunch of clients. I'm ready to give you clients right now. So how long did it take you guys to get to, profitability on that second location?
Well, I mean, it was actually profitable from, I'd say, the second week. And wow. The reason was, again, I was renting a dental chair. I already had the equipment. So what I did, instead of duplicating the equipment, I mean, I don't know if you want to call it bush league, but I traveled with my equipment. I literally had one set of things. Wow. I just got out of school, and I would travel with my equipment. So I didn't have to buy anything else. And I just would plop down in his chair, and I would see those patients. And so it was profitable from day one. And it was a blessing in disguise. It was a lot of work, but it was well worth doing, and helped me, when I went to go build that first office, they now had the cash flow of a practice that had 2 locations, and it was substantial for not having any. I mean, I probably had, I don't know, maybe $20,000 worth of equipment completely, equipment and supplies, and yet that was 2 practices. So it was a quick start, but it helped me immensely in being able to establish a real life, footprint with a building and brick and mortar place that was my own.
So how long? Okay, so you essentially kind of you rented a chair from him, and then how long was it until you opened up your own practice with your own building in that location?
So the first practice I did was February of 2004. I opened the practice. I opened up with him in, I guess my first day of work was October of 2004 in the second location. And in 2000, at the end of 2005, so just under 2 years after the first one started, that's when I moved into my own location, which was, I moved that first office to a brick and mortar. And then within about 6 months, I had moved that second location into a brick and mortar next door to him. I built out, he had extra space on his building that I then built out. So I had kind of 2 construction projects going along at the same time as well.
Okay. And so then what was it like then? You said the first 2 were de novo. How did you move on to your third location?
Third location was a real estate investment opportunity. There was a building that I liked. I liked the location for it. I said I would never do 3 locations because I didn't think that it, from a business standpoint, it necessarily made the most sense, but the real estate made sense. There was a dentist in the building, really good lease that he had, a long-term lease, and there was a vacancy. So I decided to buy the building and thought, what a better tenant to be than myself. So then I built that one out, and that became the third location. So that one came backwards. It started as a real estate transaction and turned into a third dental location.
So, okay, was this an area? I guess it wasn't an area that you were targeting because you said you weren't looking at opening 3. So where was it located? Like, how far away was it from where you were, and what made it appealing to you?
It was like a triangle from the other two offices.
Nice.
So I was here and here, and it was up there. And orthodontics is an interesting business where you have to be local. People aren't going to, I mean, I shouldn't say aren't, but very few people will drive across town, especially in Dallas Fort Worth, where it's such a busy area, because you're typically getting a kid out of school. So again, going back to what I said earlier, it was strategically located near schools in a very fast growing school district. And so for that reason, it just made sense to me to go ahead and do it. I also had associate doctors working for me at the time. And so I could spread myself a little more thin because we had these other doctors working. So I had a little extra time that I could dedicate to it.
So on these three locations, these first 3, would you consider them like office plazas? Would you consider them retail plazas? Like, what types of commonalities did they have?
No, the first one was that 10,000 square foot building that I leased a space. It was pretty much a medical development. It had become more of a medical dental type development. The second one was that I built on was inside of it. There was a dental office next door, and we were there. And then the third one was the same, orthodontist and a dentist next door. That one became a medical, but the last 2 were medical plazas for sure. The first one was a mixture of a lot of things, mostly like title companies and medicine type of thing, more slower paced businesses plus the medical.
Okay. Now, how was the drive-by traffic and the street visibility for these locations?
The first 2 had huge drive-by, between 25 and 50,000 cars at that time. I'm sure it's way more than that. And the third location, again, the real estate opportunity one, was much more remote. So I don't even know what the drive-by, I knew what it was at the time. I don't recall what it was, but it was certainly much less. It was in the thousands of cars a day, but not, tens and 20.
But you guys were able to overcome that just simply because you're close enough proximity to the school. And then with less drive-by traffic, how were people finding out about you? Were you doing digital ads or anything like that?
No, at that. So back in the time we were doing that, there's a lot more mail ads and all that, which I don't do much of anymore. But that was a remote community, and all of those people were driving into either my other practices or some other practices. They were having to drive in. So I just did it as a convenient step. As a matter of fact, when I moved out there, several patients that I was already treating were so thankful. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so much closer now. We don't have to drive all the way to, office number 2, we can come here. And so from there, it just built by word of mouth because I put myself in another remote area. I always went to places where I looked just a little bit crazy moving there because I always stayed on the fringe. I was never in the big city, more rural type of places, which is the kind of area I like. I'm not like a big city guy. I'm more, country. And so it worked out perfect for me. It was fitting for me to be living in that kind of area and then also to be treating patients in the area.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so on this third one, essentially you're investing in the real estate side, and you said, hey, I might as well come on and occupy a spot and pay rent to myself type thing. And how many like neighbor tenants do you have in this spot?
So now so I only own the one individual building with myself and the dentist, and then there's 4 buildings total, and they're occupied with pediatric dentists, oral surgeons, a pediatrician, and so it's really filled out with exactly what I had hoped it would become, and that the broker that or the original owner of the building had hoped it would become. So, and I've helped to fill that out for him. I referred the surgeon out there, I referred the pediatric dentist out there, and also the pediatrician. So I guess I'm kind of like a sub broker, but I never get commissioned for it. Maybe I should think about my profession again.
All the work, none of the benefits.
That's right. Exactly.
No, that's cool. Were those guys weren't even the same from your first location?
No.
All different, really.
Everyone's different. Yeah.
Okay.
Very few people want a second location. And I will say this, and like if you're a pediatric dentist or most of those businesses, if you're a solo practitioner, having a second location doesn't necessarily make that much sense. In orthodontics, it's a little different because you there's a lot more hands-off treatment. You have a lot of assistants doing work, so you can spread yourself a little more thin, to be honest with you. So it's good for the orthodontic model, but not necessarily good for the other models.
How many square feet do you guys take up?
So it depends. I mean, we have it all across the board. I would say a good feel for just a practice, if we're going to be there a couple of days a week, would be in that 3,000 to 4,000 foot range. Our main office is 6,000 square feet, is our biggest, and our smallest is 2,200. So, and then most of them are around the 3,500 range, I would say.
So, okay. So anywhere between 2,200 and 6,000 square feet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Quite the range. Okay. All right. So now we're at location 3, and obviously it's a partly real estate deal too, but it seems like, or how long did that one take to get traction and really start moving?
It was and has continued. It was the slowest one of all. I mean, it was profitable because I was moving patients over, but I was just robbing from Peter to pay Paul, in essence, going from one practice to another. And so I would say after about 12 months, I think it was generating enough patient flow to pay for everything. Again, the slowest of those. And it was my last de novo that I ended up doing. And it was that one that I realized, all right, I'd probably be much better to build out what I have, or to take a different method of moving forward, maybe even purchasing a practice down the line, if I ever did that again, which is what ended up happening.
Okay. Why do you think that one was the slowest compared to the other ones?
Because of how rural it was. Yeah. It was, and it still is rural. They had a plan. So this is one of those demographic things that I did the research on, and then the city plans changed. So there was supposed to be a confluence of these major highways coming together, and I was right there next to them. And then the city, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I think 08, 09, everything kind of changed in the industry. And so they switched how they were going to run the highway system, and still have yet to build it. They're doing it now, but it's taken all that time. So the roads never, the influx of traffic that I was expecting never happened.
Yeah. Crazy, how much that affects it, right? Like that's why we focus so hard on those analytics. And I know you do too. You spend a lot of time with the demographics, because you really got to learn it. You really got to learn the demographics in the area. They are different from area to area. I mean, median incomes change, population densities change. It's all about relativity, to other buildings or trade areas within that region, right? And so, having that drive-by traffic, knowing that you've got good anchor tenants, I mean, it can really, as you see, slow down the business if it doesn't pick up, or if you miscalculate one of those things, or even if you know it but you take it for granted, or I think you can overcome it. I mean, we like to look at rent sometimes as a factor of marketing, and it's like if you don't want to pay the extra rent because you want to save money, but it's more recessed, it's less visible, then you're gonna have to get patients somehow. Maybe you're good at referrals, and that's great. Maybe you're relying on digital ads, and in that case, those are bidding platforms. I mean, it's only going to go up, right? And so we just say, hey, if you pay more in rent, can you significantly reduce your ad spend? And a lot of times the answer is yes. So just looking at it through a different lens,
For sure.
Yeah.
It was an unfortunate thing, but that just shows you how, I put trust in something that I'd hoped would happen, and it didn't, but I was able to still, make it. It just didn't do like I thought it would do, but
just a little slower.
For sure.
Okay. All right. So, you said you only ever thought you wanted 2. Now you've got 3. At this stage, you're starting to think to yourself, well, maybe I can continue to grow and scale. Like, when did that shift happen?
So, I mean, I stayed like that for a few years, and then, personal things happened. I had some health issues in my family, actually. And what ended up happening was, here I am trying to hold these, maintain these, and build. My wife had some pretty serious health issues, and a co-resident of mine from back when I was in my orthodontic residency, and my great friend, Andy Young, he and I had been talking about partnering. He had some crazy situations happening. He was practicing up in the Kansas City area, and he sold his practices, moved down and joined mine. And so that started the new whirlwind of growth. So now it's, when you got that partner, now you got someone that, I don't know how to explain this, but it's like your check valve. You want to do things to impress him. He wants to impress you. You want to grow. And so
like rocket fuel.
It is. And within a couple of years, we had added 2 more locations. Once he he came in, it's interesting. He came to ease tension because of all the health things going on. And instead of just taking time and sitting back, we went and bought a new practice, built it, and it's a great practice. Love that office. And then turned around and did another one just
Wow.
right after.
So you didn't necessarily lighten your workload that much for too long.
No, but you know, I realized how much fun that is. And it's a lot more fun when you have someone to bounce ideas off of than it is just to, doing it, I would have never done it solo. That would have spread me way too thin, but you know, there's some synergy, you know, 1 + 1 in this case equaled 3 as opposed to 2, you know, we were able to really do something special. And so
That's cool. So what, so yeah, you got to 3, took a couple years, found a partner. Then how did you guys pick the location that you were going to go? Were you focused? Did you have certain, like what parameters did you have for? Because at this stage, you're doing pretty much all acquisition, right?
Right. Well, at that stage, we just started looking, saying, hey, what can we do to grow? What can we do to grow? And we knew of a community, again, another rural community that we would like to be in. There happened to be an orthodontist in that community. We knew him and actually knew his kid, his daughter was actually an orthodontist, and she was supposed to come take over that practice. Well, when we found out that she wasn't coming because she had married another dental professional and they were going to move, it's a twisted dental world. That guy's a surgeon and his dad was a surgeon as well. And so he was going to go to his dad's practice, which was in a different city, quite a ways away. So we knew that he didn't have the legacy that was going to come in and buy his practice. And so we went and said, hey, we'd like to buy this. He said, I'm not quite ready to retire yet. I said, okay, that's fine. We did research on the area. We were going to come to the area anyway, because we knew he was retiring within a year or two. And so then the day before we signed our lease at another location, we just came to him and just said, hey, we want to make sure. We don't want to compete against you, but we really want to move out here. And this is the right time for us. And he said, you know what? I'm thinking this through. I don't want to compete either. He said, let's just do a deal. So we bought his practice and it was in a great location. We made a deal with him that we'd continue to rent his building for the next few years. I think it was 4 more years. But in the meantime, we went ahead and bought property where we really wanted the practice to be, going back to your previous comment that while more expensive to do it, the visibility, you know, his practice had been there for 20 years or maybe 25 years. And what was a great location was no longer. And now what used to be out in the middle of nowhere was a great location. So we bought that property and sat on it and just waited till the right time to build the building.
Yeah, cool. So in that case, how did you handle the cash flow with that building? Were you sinking personal money into it as a long-term investment, not worried about it?
That's correct. Yeah, we have little real estate holding companies that we use, and so we invested into that company and went ahead and built the building. But yeah, we just basically came out of pocket to do it.
Okay. And then did that affect your growth plans at all, or were you able to secure financing to grow locations, or were you just doing well enough with cash flow from the businesses that you didn't have to worry about it?
That's right. It was cash flow from the businesses that we were able to turn around and sink back into the assets. So we always just made sure, we borrowed money, of course, to do it. The debt market was at the time that we did this wasn't that long ago. It was the right time. We could borrow money at a reasonable price to make it worthwhile. And then once we could start paying ourselves rent, it started to make sense. And the property wasn't super expensive to hold on to for a couple of years. And so it was the right time to do it. But again, it was more of a personal expenditure. Just that was our investment rather than putting it into stocks or something. I'd much more put it into something I have control
of. Nice. Okay. All right. And then, so you were there for 4 years. And so at this stage, that was really like your first acquisition. I'm sure you guys learned a ton from that. How quickly were you able to move after that to start acquiring more locations? Because now you've got 17 with 3 in the works. So obviously you've been busy between then and now.
Yeah. So within 2 years after that acquisition, we found another acquisition, and it took, a good 6 months to get through. So about 2.5 years later, we had our 5th location.
Okay. 5th location. And what year is this?
So the 5th location closed in 2018. So the 4th location was 2015. The 3rd location was, I think, 2012, and then the first 2 started in 2004 and 5.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we've moved both of those buildings too.
So in 2018, you had 5 locations, and in 2020, you had 17. In 2021, you're about to have 20. So what changed between 2018 and 2020?
So in 2018, we formed a partnership with a private equity firm, and we had this desire to create something bigger. As you can see, here we are building, but you're hearing several years in between each build. And he and I had this grander plan. And our plan was actually, we felt like what would be really smart, and we don't know why it doesn't exist, is a company that it's a dental specialty company that specializes in pediatric dentistry, orthodontics, and oral surgery. By having those kind of together with greater communication, we thought we could increase the experience that a patient would have. Interdisciplinary care, when you refer somebody out, it's really a hassle for the doctor. It's a hassle for the patient. They got to go get all these things. There's so much to it, and it makes it no fun to do. So we had this desire to do this, but we didn't have the skills to do it. We know some things that we don't know, and that's that we didn't know how to build a big business. We could treat orthodontics, but we didn't know how to build this thing with all these other practices that we have no control of. And through a series of events, we were partnered with a private equity firm that loved our model concept. And so we formed a new company called 5 Point Dental Specialists. And so we closed that deal in 2018 at the exact same time we closed on our fifth location, as a matter of fact. They were almost like simultaneous closing. So it was a lot going on. And we kind of got the groundwork under us, and it took about a year to make sure we had like the home office and everything set up appropriately, because you don't want to start acquiring businesses without having a good foundation. And so in 2019, we took on our first acquisition, which was a single location orthodontic practice. And now we're up to 17 locations just as of January 1 of this year was our 17th location. And we have 3 more under LOI right now and a few more to go.
And how many do you think you'll have by the end of 2021?
I would suggest probably we have to do it smartly. It has to be very strategic in how we do this. So I'd say maybe 25 or something like that.
Okay.
That would be kind of what my guess would be.
Okay. And then do you anticipate kind of maintaining that growth rate of 5 to 7 practices a year?
Yeah, I would say that's probably healthy. One thing that we're doing is we're looking into a couple of new geographies. So we're pretty much centered around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have a couple of opportunities in an LOI down south of us, way south Texas. And then we have an opportunity in a couple of other states, as a matter of fact. So the reason we're doing that is we do what's called a pod concept. The pod concept is you create these geographic pods where it's a hub of the referral pattern, so that you can get into one area. It's just harder to grow, but if you can get a couple of pediatric dentists, an orthodontist, an oral surgeon in a general area. So what we're doing is creating a few additional pod areas, so we can get faster growth in those geographic areas. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but if we go to a new state and a new large city, we can form that pod there. And we have some ins in a couple of other states that we're working on right now. And that will ramp up growth. I mean, we have a corporate team now backing us of 13 or 14 in our corporate office. So the company's gone from myself and Andy to a much bigger thing now.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, you guys are absolutely crushing it. And so congratulations on that, because it's not easy. Not easy to build that. It's not easy to get private equity to have faith in you. I mean, those guys are really particular about who they invest with. So I know you mentioned the interdisciplinary facets of dentistry. So right now it's mostly focused on pediatrics. So would it make sense for you guys to go next door to a dental office that's more like traditional? And that would
You mean like general dentistry?
Yeah, like just like general dentistry. Would that be competition to you guys or no?
Here's the thing. No, I mean, some of them do, all the different care, but we're a specialist. We know who we are, and we're a group of specialists. And so we have multiple opportunities to partner with general dentists, but we don't take the opportunity. And the reason is that we think it's counterintuitive to the growth of the business. While that individual opportunity makes a lot of sense, they got a great business. It really brings bad vibes from all the other general dentists in the area. And we receive, just our personal practice, we have 30 to 40 constant referrers that send to us. But if they knew that we were partnering with our neighboring dentists, they would feel that, we would be taking their patients and shifting them over. So in order to prevent that from happening, we resist the temptation and don't do it.
Okay. And then, I'm not sure if you're from a real estate perspective, do you consider that the same thing? So like if you were to look at buying a building, which I know you have a preference to, that was, let's just say it's 10,000 square feet and you guys want to occupy 6,000. Would you consider that infringing if you took a general dentist to take it another 4,000 square feet?
Absolutely not. Not
Okay.
at all. Then there's, you gotta have two different relationships. You're either the landlord, or or you're the business owner or business partner, and they're entirely different. Matter of fact, one of the buildings that we own, there is a general dentist next door, and we have a great relationship. We refer back and forth, and he's a neighboring dentist. But I would never alter that relationship. I
Okay.
think it's better to be kept separate.
However, a pediatric dentist might be a little bit too close to home.
Yeah, a pediatric dentist. Well, and it's part of our model. I don't, we actually have one location where a pediatric dentist, we actually share the location,
Hmm.
because we're in so many places that we only spend 2 or 3 days in any one, and so but he's just a co-tenant, and so but we don't own that practice, and that's okay. And then some of them we do own, but none of our ownership practices are we actually partnered in the same building. I
Okay.
think keeping things separate helps from a referral basis. That you should never. I'm not a proponent of the model of having it all under one roof.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, how much of your success do you attribute to skill versus luck and being in the right place at the right time, you think?
Obviously, there's a whole lot of luck. I you know, I hate to call it just luck. There's a lot of diligence behind it. So while it sounds like we move really fast, and we don't just wake up one day and do something. We think through these things. Have a lot of advisors. We have a lot of people that we reach out to ask for, whether it be a real estate advice, whether it be just business advice, etc. And so I guess there's a lot more to. I think it's surrounding myself with people that know, that I would say is what I would attribute to the success. Not so much luck, and certainly not personal intelligence. I think it's just really surrounding myself with good people.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. So what kind of parameters do you have, like when you're searching for new practices to acquire? What kind of, do you want to share any of those parameters?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're looking for top-notch practices, kind of local industry leaders, and then the synergy that exists between if you're kind of doing that spoken hub type of pod structure. So I'd say the first thing is to find a good strategic partner to create a geographic area, whatever that partner may be, usually a larger practice, one that has some runway, they're not retiring tomorrow. And then from there, building out from there. So I think that first practice in a general area is super important. And then from there, they will tell you who you should be partnered with as well. So that's kind of the way it works. We partner with a doctor, and Dr. A says, well, I'll tell you what, doctors B and C would be great partners for us to have. And so then we reach out to doctors B and C, usually introduced. Dr. A would say, let me introduce you to these guys. And then we start bringing them on. So most everybody that's in our entire company is someone that we've known for years, lots of years. Either we've known them personally or our partner has known them personally. So it's not just, we're not just tacking on anything that's out there.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Well, that's cool. So moving forward, what do you think what's your strategy between acquiring the businesses and acquiring the real estate?
Well, so it's actually something I'm looking very heavily into right now. We've been doing all this concentration on purchasing the business. Any of the partners that we have, that most of them, the doctors, they occupy their own buildings. Not, I would say probably 70%. Of those that want to sell their building, I would love the opportunity to be able to buy it. We're in the process of forming like a dental, I guess what's called a medical dental REIT, where we can kind of put these assets in together and have a real estate investment opportunity as well at a larger scale than just the personal offices in which I work in.
And so with this REIT, it sounds like you have a little bit of a knack for finding different tenants, like in different industries. Like you mentioned, I think you said heart surgery was one of them, or outpatient surgery, or what were some of the different?
There's oral surgery, but no, there's no heart. Yeah.
Okay, for some reason I thought you'd mentioned some different type of surgery center not related to dentistry that you're able to bring in to fill some of these empty spaces that you had.
Well, so there was dermatology. There was a couple of medicine related
Okay.
businesses, chiropractic and dermatology, but that was more just due to the fact that I put up a sheet of plywood out in front of the building and said leasing information, and the area was right. And then I
Yeah.
helped to broker that deal to get them over to the owner of the building.
Okay. Are you going to use any of those techniques in the REIT? Doing any
Of course.
speculative
Yeah,
developments?
if we were buying a building that didn't have tenants in it, so most of these, the good news about this REIT is that everyone is owner occupied right now. So we'd be buying the building, and then the other company would be the one that has the lease there. So we kind of control both facets. So it's really an intriguing opportunity to be able to own the building because the other company already has an existing long-term lease with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, that's a lot of opportunity there if you have good contacts in different industries, looking for these empty buildings. If you know that you can fill them with your database, I mean, the arbitrage is insane. That's where that value is created, because a lot of people don't realize that an empty building in real estate is not worth that much, because you think about residential real estate and your house is just tied to the location 100%. Nobody cares about who lives there or who rented there. It's just strictly about the asset. But commercial is much more like a business where it's not only about how much money it's bringing in, but it's about the credit of the tenant, because how well are they going to support that lease? How, are they going to be able to like fulfill the terms of those lease? And so, that could be something that's very interesting. And yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that a little bit more. Maybe after the call too.
Sure. One of the things that's so intriguing about the opportunity is that I think at this point in time with this company that we're, looking to do, we're all the buildings would be occupied that we would be purchasing. And so that's the beauty. I wouldn't have to deploy those tactics because
Yeah.
the occupant is already there, and it'd just be kind of an easy, swap over to move. And I think the reason to do it it'd be just a nice, where the owner or the seller of that building would, have realized gains from the years that they've owned it and be able to cash out their money. And then it'd be our turn to, try to
Yeah.
build. So it would take some time, but that's what we're looking to do.
Are you searching for any cap rates in particular?
You know what? We're still working on what the model looks like. As a matter of fact, just this last week we had a whole meeting. So no, not necessarily. I don't have an exact number to give you, but and one of the problems is dentists, even though they sometimes give themselves a fair amount of rent, typically the building is a really expensive real estate for the, especially where we're doing this in these rural communities. You can't charge $30-40 a foot in rent, but the building may be a couple $1 million building. And so it's very hard to make that cap rate appropriate. And that's where the problem is actually. So we're trying to figure out the model as to how to make this work.
Yeah, definitely one of the hard problems to solve in this industry. So, all right. Now for anybody listening who wants to reach out and get in touch or maybe partner or whatever, I mean, what's a good way to reach out and get in touch with you guys?
I think you could go to our website. So our larger company is 5 Point Dental Specialists, and it's all spelled out. And it's 5pointdentalspecialist.com. And that I'd say would be the best way. You can log in there and you can reach out to us there. I'll receive an email and we can go from there. That would be the best way to reach out to me. Or you could also just call my practice is a great way, which is Lustig and Young Orthodontics.
Okay. All right. Lustig and Young Orthodontics. I'm going to write that down. So I can put that in the show notes for everybody.
Okay, great. It's lustigyoungortho.com is our website.
Okay. I'll put both those in there for people as well. So that was great. Thanks very much for your time today. And I'm looking forward to hearing about your continued success and hopefully getting you guys back on the show in the future to get an update.
Would love it. Thanks for reaching out and for taking the time to interview me.
Yeah, absolutely.